On the morning of February 18, 2025, the Kafue River in Zambia turned the color of rust. Overnight, one of the largest rivers in southern Africa had stopped being a river and started being a wound. Fish surfaced by the thousand, belly up, drifting into the reeds. The birds that fed on those banks every dawn were simply not there. People who had drunk from this water their whole lives crouched at the edge and would not touch it. Within a day, a single sentence was moving faster than the current itself. The river, people said, had died in the night. Upstream in the dark, a wall had broken. Behind it had sat 50 million liters of acidic waste from a copper mine. And it was already moving toward 12 million people. You may not have heard of this. That is, not because it was hidden. Satellites photographed it from orbit. Scientists mapped it. Human Rights Watch would later write it all down. But it simply never reached most of the world outside Zambia. One of the people who refused to look away was a tailings engineer named Holy Pola. She was Zambian, and the river that was dying was hers too. Holy Pola had spent years around structures exactly like the one that failed. She knew better than most that a tailings dam is only ever as safe as the attention paid to it. In the weeks that followed, she would reconstruct the death of the Kafue almost minute by minute. But to see what she saw, you first have to understand the river. The Kafue winds for hundreds of kilometers through the middle of Zambia. Its waters touch close to 60% of the entire country. Around 12 million people drink from it, wash in it, and grow their food along its banks. Farmers flood their maize fields from its channels. Fishermen have worked its shallows the same way for generations. The city of Kitwe, home to roughly 700,000 people, takes its drinking water straight from the river. In the plainest terms, the Kafue is the water that keeps a nation alive, which is exactly why what happened upstream mattered so much. Northern Zambia carries a name the road maps barely explain: the Copper Belt. Generations, this red earth region has been dug open for copper. Copper for wiring, for engines, for the phones and cars of the modern world. The copper leaving this ground ends up in almost every device you own, and the world's appetite for it has only grown. Near the town of Chambishi sits a copper operation called Sino-Metals Leach Zambia. It is majority owned by a Chinese state company, China Non-Ferrous Metal Mining. Its chairman is a businessman named Zhang Peiwen. Pulling copper from rock is a chemical business, and a dirty one. The ore is crushed, soaked, and leached with acid until the metal comes loose. What is left behind is a gray slurry of water, fine rock, acid, and heavy metals. The engineers call this waste tailings, and tailings have to go somewhere, so mines build enormous ponds to hold them, walled in behind dams of packed earth. These are tailings dams, and there are tens of thousands of them across the planet. They are among the largest structures human beings build. They are also among the least watched. Most people have never heard the words tailings dam until one of them lets go. Here is the thing every tailings engineer like Holy Pola quietly carries. A dam like this rarely breaks all at once. First it weeps. Water finds a thin path through the wall and begins to trickle. Engineers call it piping. It is the sound a dam makes before it screams. Chambishi, the waste was stacked in compartments, one cell sitting above the next. A dividing wall held the two upper cells apart, and through that dividing wall quietly water had begun to seep. It was a small thing, the kind of seepage that looks like nothing on a Tuesday. The seepage is the detail Holy Pola would later circle in red, because on the night of February 17th, no alarm ever reached the villages below. The people who would pay for it were asleep. Along the Mwambashi stream and the Kafue beyond it, life followed the season. It was February, the green middle of the growing year. In the fields, the maize stood tall and heavy still. Weeks from harvest, bean and groundnuts grew in the soil beside it. For the farming families here, that standing crop was the whole year in advance. School fees were in it. Seed for the next planting was in it. Dinner for the coming months was in it. This is farming that leaves almost no margin for a bad year. One ruined season can pull a child out of school and keep them out. A farmer could stand at the edge of the field in February and count the weeks to the sale, then go home and sleep, the way anyone sleeps before an ordinary day. Sometime in the early hours of February 18th, the dividing wall gave way. The seepage had been eating through it from the inside. When it failed, the waste in the upper cell surged sideways into the next. That compartment could not hold the sudden weight it overtopped, spilling across its own wall, and then the failure began to cascade, one cell tipping into the next. Wall after wall came apart in the dark. There was no siren. There was no evacuation. There was only liquid moving where liquid should never be. Downstream in the villages, no phone rang. 50 million liters of acidic waste tore out of the pond. That is around 13 million gallons, enough to fill 20 Olympic swimming pools. It poured into a small stream feeding the Mwambashi. The Mwambashi carried it straight into the Kafue, a region's worth of copper leftovers let loose in a single night. By first light, where the wall had stood, there was only a ragged gap. A bright scar of waste ran downhill from it toward the water. The plume moved fast, down the Mwambashi into the Kafue, and onward 10 kilometers, then 50, then 100. Satellites, passing over Zambia, caught it from space. From orbit, it looked like a stained ribbon drawn through green country. The first warning most people got was the smell, and then the color of the water on the ground. It did not look like a chemical spill. It looked like the river was bleeding. The acid stripped the oxygen and burned the life out of the water. Fish died in numbers no one could count. The surface went silver with them. Then still people stood on the banks and watched whole stretches of the river empty of anything alive. The birds left, the frogs went quiet. Cattle that drank at the edge grew sick. Families waded in to scoop dead fish from the shallows, then thought better of touching the water at all. The people who fished for a living had in a single morning no living left to fish for a river that had fed people for generations went silent in a single day. That was the moment the fisherman's words came true for everyone. The Kafue had died overnight. The first emergency was drinking water. Kitwe, that city of 700,000, drew its supply straight from the Kafue. Within days, officials shut the intake off completely. Overnight, hundreds of thousands of people had nothing safe coming from their taps. Women walked the roads with empty containers, hunting for anywhere clean to fill them. Trucks began hauling water in from further out. It was never enough and never fast enough. Hospitals and schools scrambled for water that would not poison the people who drank it. In a country built around this river, the river had become the thing to fear. Then came the fields. Where the poisoned water reached the crops, the maize began to wither and brown. The harvest that had been weeks away died where it stood. Groundnuts rotted in ground that had turned against them. The soil along the banks was left soaked in acid and metal. You cannot rinse acid and heavy metal out of a field the way you rinse a cup. Families who had counted the weeks to the sale now counted what was gone. The school fees were gone. The seed money was gone. A year of work had drained downstream in a night, and nothing was coming back by spring. This is where Holy Pola comes back into the story. While the water was still moving, she was already working backward from it. She studied the broken dam, the cascade of cells, the path of the plume, and she kept returning to that one dividing wall. The seepage through it, she found, was not a freak event. It was the kind of warning a well-watched dam is meant to catch early. The wall had been telling someone it was failing in the only language a dam has, and no one downstream had been told to run. She was not looking for someone to blame. She was looking for the exact point where it became preventable. For an engineer, there is a particular grief in finding that point. She could see in the wreckage every place the disaster could have been stopped. As the scale became clear, the response finally came. Zambia's government declared the spill an environmental disaster. President Hakeem Hichilema pressed for the river to be made safe, and for answers, craft were sent to drop lime into the water, trying to neutralize the acid from the air. Chimas worked the banks, testing the water day after day. Sino-Metals chairman Zhang Peiwen appeared in public and apologized. He bowed and promised the company would help restore what it had ruined. It was an apology delivered to a river that could not hear it, and within days a second smaller leak was reported at another Chinese-run mine nearby. To the people on the copper belt, that second leak said something plainly. This was not one broken wall. It was a way of doing business that treated the river as somewhere to put the risk. Months later, Human Rights Watch documented what the spill had done to people's lives. Their findings were blunt. Families had lost income, food, and clean water, and no one had truly been held to account. The report pushed for real compensation and for oversight with teeth. But the harder truth sat underneath the Zambian case. There are tens of thousands of tailings dams standing right now on every inhabited continent. They sit above towns in Brazil, above valleys in the United States, above rivers in Canada and Europe. Many are older than the people living below them. Many are watched about as closely as the wall at Chambishi was. In 2019, a tailings dam in Brazil collapsed and killed hundreds of people in a matter of minutes. The engineers who study these failures keep writing the same warnings. And the dams keep standing, mostly unwatched, waiting. When one fails, the pattern rarely changes. The seepage is missed, the alarm never comes, and the people downstream learn about it from the water. Zambia was not an exception to how these dams fail. Berry was a preview. The Kafue did not stay silver and still forever. Water kept flowing as rivers do, and in time some fish returned to the cleaner stretches. But heavy metals do not simply wash away. They settle into mud, into soil, into the roots of crops and the flesh of fish. Some families left the riverbank altogether, unwilling to gamble their health on water they no longer trusted. The people who stayed were left with a question no aircraft could answer. Was the water safe now, or only clear? For a farmer deciding whether to plant again, that is not an abstract question. It is next year's harvest, and whether the family eats. The Kafue is flowing again, and it is still carrying what was done to it. Holy Pola's reconstruction did what good engineering is supposed to do. It turned a catastrophe into a lesson precise enough to act on. A dividing wall that seeped a warning, no one answered. A river, no one guarded. None of it was mysterious. And that is the hardest part. Everything that killed the Kafue was known, and known in advance. This is why it matters that the story traveled so poorly beyond Zambia. Not because anyone buried it, the evidence is public and easy to find, but because a disaster you never hear about is a lesson you never learn. 12 million people share a river with a mine, and not only in Zambia, most of them will only find out how thin that wall is on the morning it breaks. The fishermen on the Kafue said the river died in the night. What they meant was that it died while everyone who could have stopped it looked away. If this story reached you here, maybe before almost anywhere else, then follow along, and the next forgotten disaster will find you first.